There's so many things we can learn from the world of Agile and the world of predictive. I'd like to think about the world of predictive and do a comparison. The world of predictive, traditional project management, often incorrectly referred to as waterfall, has been around for eons, right? Predictive, traditional project management's been around for a very long time. When you compare the documentation in the world of predictive to the revisions of the documentation in the world of Agile, it makes you wonder a little bit. Take, for example, from 2001, when the Agile Manifesto was first authored, all the way to 2025. How many revisions of the Agile Manifesto do you see? Think about it. None. Because the principles are solid and they stand till today. So do the values. But when you take a look at comparative worlds, such as predictive, and how many times there have been revisions of predictive standards and documents from bodies such as the PMI, it makes you wonder. In 2001, the first version of the PMBOK guide was still in existence. And then the second came out shortly before I took the PMP exam in 2005. And the third came out in quick succession. And then the fourth and the fifth and the sixth and the seventh. And now the eighth. And when you take a look at the multiple revisions, it makes you ask the question, how much of these revisions is truly value to the practicing project manager? And it makes you ask the question, why doesn't Agile have so many revisions? You take a look at the Scrum Guide, Ken Schwaber and Jeff Sutherland, and how many revisions have there been? And even when there are revisions, take a look at the number of pages in the Scrum Guide. The last count used by over 12 million people, but does not require as much revision and overhead. There's a lot we can learn from the world of Agile. People like me who pretty much cut their teeth in the world of predictive project management. Very unwieldy processes and tools. And it's okay to have those on projects. Munitions cleanup projects, both of which I've been on, requires a lot of rigor, and there's nothing wrong in rigor. But it does beg the question, how many of these changes that we see in the various standards every 3 to 4 years are truly offering value to the project, program, and portfolio manager? And the honest truth in my musings that I've uncovered is very little. And the reason is this: if you ask the PMPs who got certified pre-2000, ask them how many times they've been for a training program that elevated their understanding of the subsequent PMBOK guides, I wager you'll hear a lot of crickets, because very few PMPs do that. And the reason why they don't do that is they are able to effectively manage projects with what they had learned when they took the exam. So a lot of the revisions we see, I feel, are quite sentimental. And I'm not just talking about the PMI, I'm talking about, in general, many of the traditional bodies that have standards and methods and artifacts. And it's time to pause and ask the question, is this Kaizen or is this Kayaku? Is it change for the better or is it needless change? I love learning from the world of Agile, and there are things the world of Agile can learn from us, the predictive people. For example, being more intentional in risk management and having risk registers and having a risk approach. It doesn't even have to be a register, but I've come across teams that have a good risk management approach, even though they're in the world of Agile, and they do a lot of this in their backlog and using other means. So there's stuff we can learn from each other. But today is to ponder on the world of Agile. 4 values, 12 principles, that have stood the test of time. I know occasionally I get the student that argues, Phil, we don't agree with principle number 6, or we don't agree that face-to-face, it has to be face-to-face. What about Zoom, and what about pair programming via Zoom and Teams and stuff? And while they have a point, it's hard to argue that the Agile Manifesto has not stood the test of time, and the Scrum Guide very wisely has stayed away from the controversy of many more processes and many more tools that could have been suggested, but they were wise to stay away. Things to think about in the world of project management.